Just so everyone knows, I will be voice recording this panel, and I'm going to figure out how I can get it uploaded. I'm going to try something. I don't know if Audacity will work with Discord. If not, I do have a handheld voice recorder that I'll also be using. But if I, let's see. All right, let's see. Yes? Oh, fantastic. All right, always good to have a backup anyways. All right, thanks. All right, I'm just testing Audacity, and we will get started here in just a minute. All right, yes. Yes, my birds. I have diamond doves. They're very chatty little tiny things. All right, everyone, we are at 5:10, so let's get this show on the road. So I hope everyone has been enjoying Othercon this year. It has been fantastic, and it's wonderful to have you all here today. Before I begin, I just want to let everyone know that I won't really be monitoring the chat while I'm talking. This will be an open discussion at the end that I'd love for all of us to engage in, but for now I'm wrangling my focus on the spoken words, because if I don't, I'm going to get way off track. Before you know it, I'll run out of time, and I want to make sure I give you guys everything I promised, and we leave plenty of room for discussion at the end. My name is Zira, though I also go by Blue. Non-binary pronouns, please. My favorites are Zira, but I also appreciate they, them, these, them, and AM. Just keep it NB and we're good. I've lived this life for 28 years in northeastern Ohio in the USA, and I've been in the Kinnity community for 12-ish years. I do a lot of strange things like reading self-help books and practicing witchcraft, especially pop culture paganism. And for a little while, I've been doing even stranger things like talking in front of people. Hey, I have 2 chinchillas and 4 diamond doves that like to talk along with me. Some of you have already heard them making their vocal debut here. If you hear tiny little cooing in the background or a big metal wheel clattering, that's just like with my pets. I have a few different kin types, but the most influential ones are some of my past lives. I'm sort of perma-shifted as a regular old Earth Raven, which is what I first awakened to so many years ago. But I'm still not sure exactly what species yet. I am sure of my Picto types, including Blue Diamond from Steven Universe, Lilith Clawthorn from the Owl House, Ryu Bakura from Yu-Gi-Oh!, and most recently, Harrowheart Nonagesimus of the Lox Tomb Not Quite fame. Hey, Ohio friends! The universe really did say this one's going to get redemption arc after redemption arc, and that's just my life, and past life, I guess. If you're familiar with my fiction sources, you'll probably recognize them as the kind of lives that make your heart hurt a little or a lot. And if you're familiar with the term exotrauma, I've got that in spades. As Blue, I struggled to cope with immense grief. As Ryu, I struggled with dissociation and depersonalization. As an X-Raven, I struggled with being landlocked. I don't have wings, and that sucks. And being Harrowheart isn't just opening a can of worms, but an entire palette of cans, and I'm still trying to cope with the moment that I started considering that one. As for the this human life, I have ADHD, depression, PTSD, social anxiety, and specific phobia disorder. So I'm an old hand at coping with mental health struggles. All this to say, if you're struggling with kin stuff and mental illness, buddy, I've been there, and I picked up a few tricks for dealing with it along the way. Obligatory disclaimer here that I'm not quite qualified to give medical advice, not at all actually. I'm not here to sell you a magic band-aid that fixes everything. Rather, I've spent the past 6 months brainstorming things that have helped me and those in my personal circle, as well as taking a leaf or two out of books I've read and therapy sessions I found useful. I've been dealing with these things my whole life, and I've dedicated the past 8 years or so to understanding the mechanics of such difficulties, and learning from my psychologists, my mentors, and even my spiritual leaders how to not only survive and go through these struggles, but to grow through them. I'd like to share with you all today what has helped me and plenty of other people to do just that. The first thing I want to share is that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. I highly, truly, madly, deeply encourage self-reflection and even experimentation. After all, you won't know if something works for you until you try it, and everyone's experience is going to be different. I have some tips on how to find your own way. After being in the community for 12 years, I've seen many stories and heard a great many methods that I'd like to share. I'd also be honored if you would join me for an open discussion at the end where we'll kind of be brainstorming a few things and see if we can't help each other out. The topic at hand is coping with Kinnity. So what exactly is coping? It's a very broad term for behaviors that consciously or unconsciously help us, well, to cope. There are 3 steps to the coping process. We have an experience that negatively impacts us. Our behaviors change in one way or another, and the negative impact of that experience is lessened. We have a bad experience, our behaviors change, and the impact is lessened. Coping mechanisms can be positive or negative, healthy or unhealthy. I'm not here to judge anyone's techniques. We're all just doing our best to get through this life, you know? But before we get to the coping, let's get kind of vulnerable and explore some common kin struggles, the negative impacts that kick off the coping process. Things kin folks may have to cope with can include a statistically big one, which is species dysphoria. Alt-H defines species dysphoria as being distressed or uncomfortable about one's perceived or bodily species. The disorientation that comes with mental and astral shifts changes the way we think, and thus the way we try to navigate our lives in the human world. It can be distressing to miss our limbs and other body parts that aren't there in the human world. It can be feeling stifled when we can't express a natural behavior, such as hunting or emoting the way our kin type would. This goes on and on. Maybe you're not feeling dysphoric, but you could still be experiencing disorientation. The time of day we're active in human life might be contrary to your kin type's rhythms, or you might want to be in another place where your kin type calls home. Homesickness can be a big thing for everyone on the kin spectrum. You might be surprised when your self-image doesn't match what you see in the mirror. Your senses might be especially sensitive and easily overwhelmed, or they might be dulled and unfocused. You might find yourself moving differently, awkwardly, to accommodate dissonance between physical body and what your instincts are telling you to do. Phantom limbs throw off our proprioception, the awareness of where our body parts are, and you might be jarred by feeling proprioception on something you can't see. And gender dysphoria. Oh boy. A lot of us experience gender weirdness relating to shifting into someone of a different gender. I generally identify as agender, non-gender, just absolute male. But my kin types span from masculines to femme-presenting to being in the kind of world where gender as a whole doesn't align with what we see in the society at all. That's worth a whole panel on its own, and I have no idea how to summarize this one, but if you know, you know. Well, this one's my favorite. not. Emotional struggles. Many of us feel embarrassment over our kin types. The source material might be really harrowing for fiction kin, particularly villain kin. We might be ashamed of what we've done as our kin selves. Object kin might struggle to find validation for their experience in general, and feeling alone or rejected by the community at large brings its own experience that one has to cope with. Not to mention the general experience of not looking or being like how you expect to look or be. You might be troubled by painful memories or by not getting memories. Both are valid experiences. Not all kin types are past tense. Memories might bring guilt or shame, longing or nostalgia, even exotrauma, intense emotions caused by trauma from another time or another place outside of the life you're currently living. A personal anecdote. I was poisoned in a past life. It's not a kin thing, just one of my regular old human past lives. And the traumatic memories of that greatly contributed to my emetophobia. Discovering that was quite a shock, but things sometimes just fall into place and you realize there's a cause for it. You might also experience vivid dreams or even nightmares. If it's a kin kind of dream, it can cause uncertainty, whether it's from a memory or just a regular run-of-the-mill fabrication of your imagination. Sometimes you just don't know. This list is by no means exhaustive, but if I listed all the aches and pains that come with Kinnity, we could be here clear through to Thursday. So let's move on to coping strategies. This is the survival part of the panel. Little gestures for you, yourself, and your kin type to help you through the day. If you take anything away from this lecture today, I think the most important, most universal skills in the survival guide are introspection, asking yourself revealing questions, self-affirmations, and self-acceptance. You have to think about it and find out what works for you. Your internal thoughts and the actions you enact play into each other, and they feed each other. The one thing that seems universally beneficial is having a support system. People who can validate and uplift and reassure and sometimes even knock some sense into you. You can find people like this on various Discord servers, sometimes on Tumblr, and events like this very convention. If you're enjoying being in such a big server with a bunch of ultra-human folks, by the way, be sure to check out the Othercon server. It's basically this con's off-season hub. It's great, it's rather active, and there are kin of all colors. Though I don't have any experience with them, I've also heard of kin communities existing on Amiibo, Twitter, and Instagram. I don't use them, but from what I've seen, it's hard to sort these communities by the kind of kin they are, so it might take some winnowing through different accounts to find what you're looking for. I don't know how well the hashtags differentiate, but if you're feeling brave, it might be worth venturing into. It may take a few tries to find your place. We all vibe best with different kinds of people, and different environments are better for some than others. We have to keep trying. None of us are meant to be alone. Ideally, you want to find a safe place for yourself to express benign natural behaviors, play with your voice, dress and accessorize how you like, and talk about these things with others who will encourage and uplift you. And now for some coping strategies you can use when you're on your own. In broad strokes, let's call this first one environment modification. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about this one because it's so vastly customizable and there are so many ways to achieve it. It can be exactly what it sounds like, modifying the physical environment around you. Set free your internal interior designer. The colors you surround yourself with can evoke good kin feels like bright blues for soaring in the sky or dark blues for deep sea kin. LED lights if you're some kind of fake kin or you want to see something like bioluminescence. Or greens for rolling pastures and earth tones for caves. You can get decals for your walls, like clouds or trees or art of buildings or settings from your source or people you knew and cherished. Furniture can be found with designs and materials, metal or wood, or even plastic, and pure vibes reminiscent of your heart homes. If you're on a budget, shopping is a great wallet-friendly way to find decorations. So if you just take a moment to think about it, what would you surround yourself with, given a choice, and what can you do to make it happen? If you like putting things down on paper, you can make a list. If you prefer something in the more visual way of things, you can maybe map out your dream home and go exploring, even just window shopping and kind of putting together an imagined haven for yourself can bring a little bit of catharsis. So, visual design isn't the only sense you can use to modify your environment. You can also surround yourself with other sensory stuff. You can use scents via candles or incense, or if you have pet birds like myself, maybe you can use scented oils or potpourri jars. Obligatory reminder that if you're using essential oils, don't use them directly on your skin without diluting them. That's pretty important. And especially if you have sensitive skins or allergies, just be sure to look into what you're finding and what you plan on using before you risk hurting yourself. For folks more like myself that prefer tactile stimuli, maybe you can use a nice blanket and clothes with pleasant textures, or furry pillows that feel like leaning against another creature if you're a social Therian. Tails and ears help fill the gap between self-image and physical form, and some even offer proprioception bonuses, things that you can feel where they are on your body and it brings some comfort. Fluffy leg warmers and socks with paw prints on the bottom can be so nice from what I've heard. There's just so much you can do. Expressing yourself is huge. Why not decorate your physical form too? Everything from keychains to body mods, from something super subtle to super shocking. I've never known anyone who didn't delight in having something of their inner world expressed in a physical to match. Etsy is a fun place to look for unique charms. Lots of costuming sites carry nails and prosthetic ears and fangs. And if you'd like to look into body mods, there's a blog on Tumblr that goes by Kinnity. I know they were at Othercon this year, but I can't remember the Discord handle right now. But there are a great many resources on things like tattoos and piercings and implants. And again, that blog is called Kinnity, Instincts with a K. Another outlet/comfort thing is the classic form of self-expression being art. If you're not fond of drawing from scratch or you want something low spoons and easy to use, there's an abstract fractals website called weavesilk.com, W-E-A-V-E silk.com, and it creates really pretty designs with a click or drag of the mouse. If you prefer wordsmithing like myself, you can absolutely express yourself through writing. Blogging about your experiences, whether you want to keep that public or private, role-playing with someone you trust, writing poetry, or even journaling. Putting words to our experiences often helps us process them and lighten the load a little. Journaling is especially helpful when you're first starting out. If you came into this panel today with no clear idea how to cope with these struggles, I would highly recommend keeping a journal. If you're looking for coping mechanisms, I think the best way to start might be to spend 5-10 minutes daily, or longer if you'd like, writing down what you're struggling with. Sit with it and contemplate it for a little while. Just figure out what's giving you trouble and what kind of distress is causing you. Once you have a handle on exactly why it's bothering you, then think about little things you can incorporate into your daily life to resolve it. If you don't know where to start, whether it's for art or journaling, you might enjoy prompt lists. You can search for prompts themed around anything having to do with your identity. If you're Therian, you can search terms like bird art prompts. If you're fiction kin, you can search for prompts from your source, or by genres like cyberpunk art prompts, and then use whatever ones inspire you. You can also use modeling clay or make collages from magazine pictures, or you can use scrapbooking. Just anything that takes these thoughts and feelings inside your head and puts them into the physical world. You don't even have to share it if you don't want to. It's all about exploring yourself and finding a way to process these things that we can't always be super open about. It can be public, it can be private, whatever works best for you. Get creative with cooking even. especially with plating things, laying them out on the table in a way that's pleasing to your kin type's eye, or eating them in such a way that's more natural to you. Especially if you're home alone, just biting into a steak can be cathartic, so I've been told, or putting down the fork for a little while, using your tongue, and honestly, if there's nobody to judge you, you're free to do whatever feels right. If you're not sure what to cook, and if you like to follow recipes, or if you'd like tailored recommendations, there's a blog also on Tumblr called Kin Eats at kin-eat that takes requests for kin types. I really like this blog because they're cool with restrictions, sensitivities, and things you dislike being put in the request. I have a ton of food sensitivities, and I found out the hard way that a hero shift basically makes me hate flavor in general, which is not good when the only way you know how to cook is with robust flavors. So I put in a request, and they found 5 great recipes that worked excellently. Sometimes you just gotta let yourself express your natural behaviors. Yep, that's the one. That blog in the chat is exactly the one I was talking about. Now, for expressing your natural behaviors aside from eating, if it's not hurting anybody, why not? You can give into a little non-human behaviors as a treat. Experience. If you're social and in the right place, you can go to zoos and hang out with others of your species. You can find a park or a forest and go bird watching. Watching nature documentaries can feel a little bit like visiting home sometimes, just little indulgences that bring you some kind of comfort. Foraging might be fun, which I imagine is especially nice for scavengers like myself, and herbivores especially. You can bring some environment modification behaviors into this by finding things out there to decorate your home with, like pine cones and pretty stones. Disclosure break. Something we've all become super aware of lately is sanitation, and I'd like to remind everyone to research ways of sanitizing whatever you collect. Most things can be baked at low temperatures, stones can usually be wiped down, and of course you want to make sure you're not bringing home any hitchhikers, invertebrates, bugs, worms, that kind of thing. The environmentalist in me wants to remind everyone to keep their collecting minimal. Don't ever take more than a third of the plant if you're harvesting something from living plants. And for legal reasons, I should probably mention the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. The Migratory Bird Treaty Act makes it illegal to take home any part of migratory birds, such as feathers, fallen nests, and bones. If you really like non-MBTA covered bones that don't belong to birds, and I wouldn't blame you one bit if you do, I'm sure you can find guides online for how to effectively, legally, safely clean and sanitize what you find by looking up vulture culture resources. And back to little indulgences. Giving yourself a little time each day to do something kin-like can be cathartic and pleasant and just really very nice. I mentioned I'm a Raventherian, and when I take a shower, drying off with a towel isn't as satisfying as flicking off the excess water in such a way that it reminds me of grooming my feathers after a bath. It's very satisfying, and it's a little everyday mundane activity that lets me express my natural behavior and find that calm and peace within myself. I also used to work at a pet store, and sometimes when I'm bored and out of sight of coworkers and customers, I would take a running leap and spread my arms wide and quote-unquote flap down as hard as I could just to see how high I could go, like a mock-up of the takeoff. Ravens are playful creatures, and it was a fun little exercise that lifted my spirit. Airplanes are way more satisfying for flying urges, but also very expensive and generally not really an option right now. And finally, I have one that I haven't really seen talked about regarding environments, but I'm sure we've all felt the pressure that comes from this one when it's not acting on us in a pleasant way. Mind your input. The input in our life is the voices we listen to, and the voices we listen to most often, or most intently, can really impact our internal world. Everything from the people you follow on Tumblr, to the videos you watch on YouTube, to the people you live with, and even the people you only see once a year for family gatherings, can all become a part of your input. I'm talking a lot about the people around you. Being vulnerable in front of them can be scary. Just take care of who you play yourself open to. Finding a friend is invaluable, but finding ridicule can be very hard to bounce back from. So, these people that you're taking input from, it's something that when it's something as vulnerable as a core aspect of your identity, you have to be a little bit careful with it. The reason you want to monitor your input is because it can change the way you think about things, and understanding what and why you're thinking something can be one of the most powerful tools in a mental health arsenal. As far as internal behavior modification goes, I've spent the most time on this with cognitive behavioral therapy, which is basically teaching yourself to think differently, which in turn causes you to feel and act differently. The main things to consider are self-talk, that is, how you talk to yourself in your own head, self-acceptance, and using affirmations. For example, I can affirm myself by saying, I am myself, I am whole, this is who I am, and I am proud to call myself a raven. It sounds cheesy, but after you tell yourself these things long enough, you really do start to believe it. If you've ever struggled with self-doubt or automatic negative thoughts regarding your kin types, the same things that apply to depressive behavior can also apply to kin life, such as, thinking how lame you are. Trying to tell yourself positive affirmations can sound pretty fake. There's something called cognitive dissonance, and that happens when we try to force ourselves to believe something that feels inaccurate to us. So the trick around that is to not force positivity on yourself. I'm going to say that again. You do not want to force positivity on yourself. Don't lie to yourself. That doesn't help anyone. If you're like me and you struggle with your little inner voice telling you you're not normal, you're a freak of nature, yada, 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 maybe try practicing a little self-compassion and say, maybe I am a freak of nature, but this freak of nature has some pretty bomb wings. I love my wings, they're a part of me, and help me feel like myself. Things like that. Little positivity things. There's a book called Switch on Your Brain. It does take some quotes from Christian scripture in each chapter, but I'm not Christian, and I literally just skipped those paragraphs and still found the book super interesting. If you're like me and you enjoy learning the science of thinking and how you can use physical neuroscience to your advantage, this is a great book for that. Again, it's called Switch on Your Brain by Caroline Leaf, and it's very good for helping you figure out how to change your thoughts in such a way that it benefits your mental health. Okay, so this one's one of my favorites. Meditation. It doesn't help everyone. Contrary to popular belief, you don't have to sit still like no thoughts, head empty. I mean, you can. You can also try walking meditation, sitting or posing with fidgets and mala beads so you have something to do with your hands. Automatic writing or drawing, sonomancy, which is a form of magic where you use music to accomplish your goal. Other forms of divination, like scrying into a bowl of water and herbs, or bibliomancy, where you intuitively open a book and read the pages to glean a message. And then, of course, there's Zen-style contemplation of questions until you feel at peace with the answer. Guided meditations are invaluable for those whose thoughts wander. Vision quest meditations make for fun adventures, especially if you like astral projection. And grounding meditations are invaluable for those who struggle with anxiety or depressive spirals. After 14 years of studying meditation, I found a really wide variety of techniques, and if you like to try it, there are plenty of free exercises on YouTube. I would recommend researching different kinds and finding one that seems to speak to you, and then practicing that, seeing if it works for you. It's worth a shot. Tying into meditation, but also being able to be used as a standalone grounding tool, is the practice of mindfulness. It can be done any time of the day while you're doing any activity. Mindfulness is really a two-step process: being aware of what's happening, especially in what you're thinking and doing, and accepting it, not denying it. Examine what you're feeling, practice acceptance, and that's not the same thing as forcing happiness. You don't need to be comfortable or happy or even okay with what's going on, but be aware of what's going on in your head and your heart, and tell yourself that you're allowed to experience this. There's an essay form letter called The Miracle of Mindfulness I'd highly recommend looking into if you struggle with grounding and acceptance. There are plenty of book versions with analysis and speculation included in the publication, but I prefer the plain PDF version because the letter really speaks for itself. Again, that's called The Miracle of Mindfulness. And then there's spirituality in general. Again, it's not for everyone, but some find a sense of peace or purpose within their spirituality. whether that looks like for them and their worldview, whatever it looks like. Coping through spirituality can be through prayer, divination, building a support system through church or youth groups, deriving strength from your creed's teachings, asking for protection, asking for insight, even practicing magic if that's your jam. Spirituality can be empowering and might offer answers in terms of purpose, which can be cathartic in helping you kind of integrate what being kin means for you and your identity and your place in the world. And then there's good old classic introspection. Unfortunately, I can't give you a clear-cut guide on how to think about yourself, but a good place to start might be Othercon question listenings, researching others' experiences, and maybe even looking into shadow work. Shadow work is a rather new agey practice, but the basic premise is accepting parts of yourself that we're taught to suppress. You have unsavory instincts, villain kin types, just don't like that part of your identity. It's worth a look. If you're struggling with accepting yourself as your kin type, whether it's from guilt, mourning, regret, longing, homesickness, or just not vibing with it, you might want to look into shadow work questions. A lot of people share questions that have helped them or questions that they think would help other people coming to terms with these things. The idea is to understand why we feel that guilt, shame, and dissatisfaction with ourselves, and foster self-compassion and self-acceptance instead. A little self-acceptance goes a long way. And this applies even if what you're accepting is uncertainty. There's nothing inherently wrong with not knowing. It can be a struggle to accept uncertainty, believe me. I can be slow to warm up to a new idea, and heaven forbid that new idea be the entire aspect of my existence. I start to doubt what I know, and doubt is a self-feeding monster, especially when we're not sure what we're experiencing or why. It took me a solid 3 months of questioning Hero Park, and I'm still not sure exactly what kind of identity it is. Statistically, most of my kin types are past lives that still affect me, but I don't know how I could have reincarnated from a universe where the afterlife doesn't seem to allow that. I don't know. It's all very confusing, but that's my point. Sometimes you just don't know. But the power really lies in asking ourselves questions, just thinking about it, maybe looking at it from different angles, and finding answers to what makes us tick, understanding that it's who we are, and then absolutely embracing it. Self-discovery and self-acceptance are signs of growth. Self-reflection is a step towards it, and self-expression is a healthy byproduct. Whatever it looks like for you, own your story. The trials and tribulations as well as the terrific triumphs. Frustration, sadness, pain, fear, these are not weaknesses. These are a natural and healthy part of life for all sentient beings. They are, however, vulnerabilities. Finding comfort in being vulnerable, even if it's just with yourself when you're secretly pondering these things. We become stronger from our struggles, and though we can help others stuck in those same pits we're so familiar with, if we are able to pull ourselves out of them, and then we kind of see the path away from those things. I hope you found these suggestions helpful, and I'd like to end this monologue with a quote from a song by Evanescence that really struck me. Shamelessly be who we are, and let all the broken pieces shine. And that's the end of my notes. Like I said, I have ADHD, and that makes it very hard to keep up with rapid-fire chatting. So if you'd like me to address any questions or comments, please ping me at Zira Shield number 1551. I'll start monitoring the chats and questions channels now. I'm making a voice recording of this panel as well, so if you'd like to access that, let me know, and I'll be sure to get you linked up when it's ready. So let's open the floor for discussion. I have a prompt to start us off. Pick one struggle to reflect on. Ask yourself why it's hard for you. Is it physically uncomfortable, emotionally? What do you think would mitigate it? And we can just go wild. So let's see. Does anybody have any questions, any suggestions? Ooh, yes, please. Son, if it could be uploaded, I would super appreciate that. Here Comes a Thought is a phenomenal song for grounding. I see that in the chat and absolutely endorsed. Okay, take your time. We've still got, what is it, like 20, 30 minutes on this panel? Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure. Yes, you can absolutely DM me. My DMs are open at any time. I do work full time, so if we have a conversation, I might not get back to you immediately, but I'll do my best to reply to everyone. I'm so glad. The song was Here Comes a Thought. Here Comes a Thought is about mindfulness, and it's from the universe. There you go. You're welcome. Any suggestions on how to feel comfortable with yourself even outside of Othercon spaces? I always feel like I have to hide myself and it can be upsetting. Well, my advice would depend on what part of yourself you want to accept. Honestly, I would say start with figuring out what it is that troubles you about yourself. And once you have somewhere to start, then you can look for, like, you need to kind of specify a question before you can look for a specific kind of solution to it. So if you're having trouble with your gender, maybe find ways to express that subtly. If you want to express your Otherkin self outside of Otherkin spaces, maybe pins that have your kin type on it, or things that people might just assume is associated with a fandom. You don't have to tell people I am Otherkin, but you can still take these little icons and use symbols that mean something to you, even if they don't mean the same thing to other people, and that can be valuable in itself. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Yagasova, about having dyspraxia and feeling clumsy in the human body. I can relate to that. It's especially the fact that I have a fairly limited range of motions compared to what a bird can do. And if I don't know if visualizations would help you, maybe. You might want to look into some thought exercises on, again, self-acceptance, and maybe, let me think, drawing pictures or, I don't know, I have no experience with tentacled kin types, but I imagine if you can find some kind of way of motion that feels, even if it's just a little bit reminiscent of it, that might help. Let's see. I'm going to ask for some shadow work advice. I've been interested in shadow work, but it's hard to find resources that aren't necessarily angled in a specific religious way and are friendly for beginners. If people want to drop links or just recommend places to look, we would appreciate it. I have a tag on one of my Tumblr blogs. It is oriented to mystic stuff, but the shadow work tag isn't meant for mystic specifically. So if you'd like, I could send you a link to that. Gail, if you'd like a link, what kind of Discord handle can I use for you? link to that. Alright, let's see, what else we got? Let's see. Any ideas how to tell people that you're otherkin due to being fed up, yet the community has a terrible mental image of what otherkin are? That one is, I would say that depends on who you're talking to. Because some people will respond better to being told that it's not something you can help if they think, like, their idea of it is, oh, you just want to do this or be this. But telling them it's not something they can help. The unfortunate thing with communicating being otherkin to other people is there is this almost colloquial idea of what it means, and unfortunately, when you're trying to convince something of something, unless they're open to having their mind changed and learning something that they're not familiar with, it can be really, really hard to get through to people. So I'm recently recovering from a broken hip and leg and might not be able to run again. One of my favorite ways to feel like a wolf. How can I try and supplement running being immobile? That's a tricky one. I would say you could. I would say it depends on if you're a more cerebral person, in which case, things like visualization and, those guided meditations I talked about might help. But if you're a more physical person, then maybe something like, I don't know, can you go swimming when you have a broken hip? I'm not familiar with that one. Swimming, taking a walk is probably not on the table for a broken hip. Let's see. If anyone has any suggestions, feel free to chime in. Let's see. Orb, you said you would like a link. What would you like a link to? Oh, Turtle asked, what was the Discord server that is basically the off-season of Othercon? It's called Otherconnect, and I believe mods have a link to it somewhere around here. Otherconnect, like Othercon with an N-E-C-T at the end. Okay, how would you deal with soul-crushing dysphoria and loss that permeates your life? Oh, my darling, honestly, when you come with loss, the best thing I can tell you to do for loss is just find out what comforts you. You might be comforted by being distracted. You might be comforted by wallowing in it. You might be comforted by memories, or they might hurt you too much. It's really a matter of trying things. Maybe you can try music, you can try reading fan works that explore that loss and grief, which can kind of create like a safe little bubble for you to contemplate it and come to terms with that loss. And it can help you move on through the stages of grief if you're reading basically someone else guiding you through it through the words. And as for soul crushing dysphoria, just try to express yourself in any way that you can. Finding, again, it's going to take a little bit of experimentation, finding what works best for you. But if you're comforted by being in a cozy little nest, you can build one in your bedroom. If you're more comforted by going outside and doing things, the things I mentioned, like bird watching or foraging, might be beneficial to you. It also depends on what the dysphoria is about. I would say try to target exactly what it is that's giving you the dysphoria. And once you know what's causing it, it's a lot easier to figure out, how to resolve it. Alright, let's see. Someone asked, do you have any tips on how to deal with Firmware? But I'm honestly not sure what Firmware is. So, Lineo, if you'd like to clarify that, maybe in the questions channel, I can try to offer some suggestions. Someone else asked for Kinstinct's Discord, and I honestly cannot remember what the Discord is right now. I'm sorry. Yeah, clothes that bring you species euphoria aren't just for going outside. You do deserve that at home too. It works the other way around. And yeah, anytime you feel like putting on something that confirms your identity, you can go for it. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Or you asked about the shadow work questions. I don't have a single link for shadow work questions, but if you put into Google or something, shadow work prompts, a ton of questions should come up for you. They're pretty much all in question format. And then it's the questions that help you, explore where these feelings are coming from and what you can do to help mitigate some of the less pleasant feelings. Yes, if you want the shadow work resources and the tag on my blog, DMing would probably be the best way to get a hold of that. And then I'll make sure I check those as soon as the panel's done. Quarian asks, any idea how to deal with feeling exposed or unprotected without feathers, or with a too expressive face instead of a simple beak, or arms being awkward and not knowing what to do with them when not in use? So, for feeling exposed or unprotected without feathers, I would recommend maybe trying some kind of clothes. I am actually really fond of like shawls and um, sleeves that have long drapey effect, because I know that for me, when I'm feeling my wings, I can feel it like in my bones and where my arms are, but I don't have sensation exactly of what's going on with the feathers. So feeling something like draping off my arms mimics that really well for me. And then as far as a face being too expressive without a beak, I have yet to figure out what to do about that. Honestly, I've kind of just dealt with human emotiveness. Although you might want to try seeing if putting some bodily expressions, some bodily emotes, like the way you hold your head, or the angle that you posture your shoulders, or even the way you walk towards things, or hopping away from them. I know that when I get startled, I like jump back and I throw my arms out like I'm spreading my wings and getting ready to fly off. So maybe you can resolve some of that dissonance by letting yourself emote through, your kintype's natural behavior. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Ooh, someone mentioned lucid dreaming. I actually have some experience with that, and though I prefer meditation to lucid dreaming, different people find different results in different states of consciousness. So if you are someone who feels more connected to your dreams than uh, your mental state when you're awake, lucid dreaming might be a neat middle ground for you to explore. Here go my birds. Alright, let's see. Ooh, do you have any tips for seasonal depression? My depression isn't seasonal, but if you do have seasonal depression, just going on what I've researched, because I do know people who have it, the best way to mitigate seasonal depression from a medical standpoint seems to be taking vitamin D supplements, going outside and getting as much sunlight as you can, or using some kind of bright light earlier in the morning and later at night to kind of replicate the sun being up like it is in seasons where you don't have SAD. So bright light and vitamin D would be my tips for seasonal depression. If it's more related to a kin type, I would say you can also do things like building a nest to mimic getting ready for hibernation, or even something simple like if you feel the depression creeping up, snacks that bring you comfort or videos that bring you comfort, or just going for a walk can help relieve depressive tendencies sometimes. Uh, Treason and Co. Yes, you asked if it would be alright if you DM me. Yes, it is. Um, I would be happy to help, and while I can't guarantee that my answers will be right for everyone, I can maybe give you some directions to go in. Do you have any advice for fiction with dysphoria, mostly about not looking like the character? The way my body looks and works is so different in a human body, and it's so weird and uncomfortable. I know the feeling. Um, I honestly, I just kind of dress as close as I can to how my kin types would, and you know, body image is unfortunately something that takes a little bit of mental work to untangle. Um, but things that make you feel comfortable in your body and um, kind of just help you accept it as it is can be relieving. Also, maybe because we can't always change what our bodies look like, um, and yeah, it can be weird and uncomfortable. But the main thing I would suggest with that is finding ways to help yourself be comfortable in the skin you do have, and just yeah, unfortunately, there's not much we can do about that. Ooh, okay. Somebody asked about finding comfort when you're ghost kin. Sometimes being physical gets too overwhelming. I would suggest, honestly, meditation could be something to try for that because a lot A lot of times meditating, it helps bring focus away from what's going on in your external senses and helps you focus a little bit more on your internal world, which can kind of quiet the external world a little bit. Any tips on helping with day-to-day dysphoria while at work? Spending most of our life at work versus at home, what are some things you can do to manage it at work? Like I said, I do work full-time, and what I usually do involves letting myself, well, first of all, finding little ways that I can express my type at work. Um, Usually something along the lines of like muttering comebacks to myself, not actually saying it to my coworkers because that could get me in trouble. But things that you wear, the way that you do your hair, the way you do your makeup, um, the kind of shoes that you wear can make a difference. You can do your nails in ways that express your kin type. Um, Unfortunately, in a work environment, a lot of the things that we would do, the tails and ears for dysphoria, aren't really an option. But I would say get creative with the clothing and the makeup. Any tips for someone whose dysphoria is so bad that seeing this human body at all is hurtful, especially in hot weather when long sleeves and pants are very feasible? I feel you on that one. If you can avoid mirrors, then you could try that just until you get to a place where it's a little more, or rather a little less hurtful. Um, if tattoos are an option, you can look into tattoos. Um, Even if it's something like henna or drawing on yourself, or finding like those little pins and things, bracelets, jewelry, ways that you can kind of decorate the human body you have to bring more of who you feel you actually are out, and generally just express yourself. Ooh, Sephora asks about mental shifts giving her vertigo. And I actually do get vertigo. I have to take a medication for it. I can't tell you to take a medication, obviously, but there is meclizine, which is Dramamine 2, that you can buy over the counter. I would say just buy a small pack of that and try it and see if it helps with the vertigo. And if it does, it's usually used for motion sickness and things like that. And if tiny movements are overwhelming, it can play into that. Um, again, I can't give medical advice, but there's also actually exercises on YouTube, like with certain ways that you can tilt your head. If you just look up exercises for vertigo on YouTube, they might be able to help you relieve some of that. Oh gosh. Someone asks, if you deal with shifts and phantom feelings, how do you deal with it? I find that whenever I move into my bear headspace, things can get weird, so I was wondering what I could do to even that out to a low-lying feeling all the time instead of sudden outbursts. I don't know how to control shifts, honestly. The main thing I can say with shifts is I I would say find ways to mitigate it. If that mitigation comes through catharsis and enacting it, like sometimes I flap my wings a little bit just to get the weird tingly feeling gone. Um, and sometimes I just completely distract myself so that I'm not feeling it as much. That's something that you probably have to experiment with to find out what works better for you. As for showing off my birds, I actually don't take a whole lot of pictures of them, but I'll see if I can find one and I'll put it in the photos chat. All right. If anybody has any really pressing questions, feel free to ask. And channel, I've been in the chat. Do you have any advice on places to learn vocalizations? YouTube, honestly. Watching and listening. And practice, 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 practice. Let's see. All right. Is there anything else anyone would like me to cover? If not, I'm going to reiterate that my DMs are open, and you guys are absolutely free to send me any questions, any stories you'd like to share, just whatever comes to mind. And I thank you all very much for the time and the attention. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of Othercon. Have a great evening. Oh, my pleasure.